Welcome back. In this lesson, we are going to learn two very cool concepts, which are compound data structures and when we should use each of the advanced data types we discussed so far. So first, let's start with compound data structures. So Python is very flexible in the values of any advanced data type, other than the set, as we know, right? So we can do the following. We can have here for this dictionary, this is a dictionary. How we know that this is a dictionary? We have the curly brackets, right? And we have the colon to differentiate between the keys and the values. Here we have the first key is 1, right? And the values for this key is in fact another dictionary, right? We have another dictionary here, and this other dictionary is in fact the value for this key. Okay, and for this inner dictionary, the first key is also 1, and you need to know that this is not repeated, right? We don't have repeated keys here because this dictionary is the inner dictionary for this dictionary, right? So this is a key for the inner dictionary, and this is another key but for the outer dictionary. So they are not repeated. So for the inner dictionary, the first key is 1, and the values for 1 are, in fact, a list, right? And inside the list, we have 1, 2, 3, and Ahmed. And we have the second key. This is the second key for the inner dictionary, right? So you need to go into the inner dictionary and then go to key, which is 3.2. And if we do so, we will see that the value for this specific key is a tuple, right? So we will have 1, 2, 3. So as you can see, it's very complex. It's a compound data structure, but sometimes it's very useful to have this type of flexibility. And we can have the same for tuples. We can create a tuple here. How we know that this is a tuple? We know this because we have the circular brackets and we have the comma, right? So here we have 1, 2, they are integers, and for the third value inside the tuple, we have a dictionary. And inside the dictionary, we have key value pair. So we have 1 as the key for this inner dictionary, and we have as a value a list. And for this list, we can have also another dictionary or another tuple or another list or whatever. The same for this list, right? We have inside this list, the second element or the second index is in fact a tuple. And inside this tuple, we have other indexing or other values. So when we go to the code by the end of this lesson, you will see how we can access the inner element, right? How we can access Ahmed, for example, if we want to access Ahmed, or if we want to access 2, you will see how we can do so, right? Based on all the information and all the knowledge that we have been building for the last few lessons. Now, when should we use each of the advanced data types we discussed? We discussed lists, dictionaries, sets, and tuples. Now, when should we use each of them? First, let's start by the lists, right? We use the lists when we don't have any special cases. We just want a container for the objects we have or the values or variables we have, right? And we need to have these values ordered, right? Maybe sorted even, because we have a sort function in the list as we saw, and we need to use them for indexing. So it should be pretty easy to index and access the elements of the lists very easily. So we use the list if we need a container that matches this specific criteria. Now for the tuples, we use them when we are sure that the values inside them should not be changed, right? We want to create some variable or some container. Now for the tuples, we use them when we are 100% sure that the container we want to create, the values inside this container shouldn't be changed no matter what. So using the tuple is the best way to ensure and assure this, right? You can use the list, you can use a dictionary, and you can use the sets, but you need to do extra work. But with the tuple, you don't really need to do any extra work because if the user, or even if you try to change the values once they are assigned, once you created the tuple, you cannot do so. An error will be thrown, and by this you will know that someone tried to change the values inside this container or inside this variable. Now for the dictionary, we use the dictionary when we have some sort of relationship. We have some kind of relation between some unique variables, right? Because we said that the keys need to be unique, and the other non-unique variables. And the name of the dictionary comes from the dictionary that we use, the English dictionary or the French dictionary or whatever. For example, in the English dictionary, we can have the keys as the letters, right? The English letters. And for each letter, we have some specific number of pages, right? These keys or these letters cannot be repeated. They need to be unique. But for the variables or for the values for each key, they can be duplicated or they can be repeated, right? So this is from where we had the dictionary idea, right? And we use them in Python for many use cases, as you will see when we go to the data science and machine learning part of the course, right? So we use dictionaries when we have some sort of relationship between some unique variables and other non-unique variables. We are only concerned with the keys. Why? Because we access the values using the keys, right? As we saw. Now, finally, we have the sets. So when should we use the sets? We use the sets when we know that any repeated data will be redundant. So sets can be very efficient in ignoring redundant data and increase the performance of any algorithm. But you might ask, don't we really have a function for the lists that can return the unique elements? No, we have a function that can do exactly this. But the idea is that you first need to create the list and then use this function on the list. But here for the sets, this is done internally, this is done from the beginning, so you create the variable with only the unique values, right? So if you know that the repeated values should be redundant and they should be removed, then it's better to use the set from the start, okay? So this is basically a summary on when should you use each of the advanced data type. Now let's go to the code and see how we can use compound data structure and how we can access elements inside the compound data structures. So here we are inside Google Colab, and as we can see, this is the outer dictionary and this is the inner dictionary, and for the first key inside the inner dictionary we have a list, and for the second key inside the inner dictionary we have a tuple. So it's pretty complex, right? So what if we want to access Ahmed, right? First we need to access the values for the inner dictionary, right? So to do so we will write myDict, right, and 1. And this one will refer to the inner dictionary, because this dictionary is in fact the value for this key, right, in the outer dictionary. Now if we do so, as you can see, we now have access to the inner dictionary. Now if we want to access Ahmed, so Ahmed is in fact inside the list, which is the value for this key, right? So now we can access this one, right? If we do so, we accessed this value by using the key which is 1, and here we access this value by using the key which is also 1, and this one is different from this one, as we said, right? Now we have access to the complete list. If we want to access Ahmed, we need to find its index, right? And we said that for Python it's 0 based indexing. So we will have 0, index number 0, index number 1, index number 2, and then index number 3. So to access Ahmed, we will write here 3, right? So now we have access to Ahmed. If we want to have access, for example, to 3.2, so we will first start by having myDict of 1, right, to access the inner dictionary, and then in order to access the elements of 3.2, we will just write 3.2, right? Now you have access to this tuple, which is 1, 2, 3, right? So you can access any element or any value inside your compound data structure using this technique by starting from the very beginning, starting from the very top, and then going deeper and deeper. Okay, now for this list we have also a compound list, right? First we have the first element or the first value inside the list is this complete dictionary, and for the second value inside the list we have this complete list, and for the third value we have this string, right? So what if we want to access CA, for example? We would first start by having my list of 0, right? Because it's inside index number 0 for the outer list, right? So if we do so, you will see that we have access now to the dictionary. Now in order to access the values for this specific key, we need to index using the key. So we'll have my list 0 and then 1, right? So now we have access to this list. Now if we want to access CA, we will just write another 1, right? If we want to access to PH, we will access 2. Now what if we want to access, for example, this 4? We will write my list 1 because this is index number 1 for the outer list. Now it will print this inner list. Now if we want to access this 4, we need to go to index 1, right? And to access 4, we need to go also to 1. So as you can see, 1, 1, 1. If we want to access 8, for example, we will write here 2. So it's pretty straightforward once you get used to it. For the tuple, let's have another exercise here also. So let's say we want to access this tuple, right? This is string. So we'll just write 2. Why 2? Because this is index number 0, index number 1, and then this complete dictionary is index number 2. Now we have access to this specific dictionary. If we want to access the values for this specific key, we need to index using the key. So we will have my tuple 2, 1. Now we have access to this list, this inner list. Now in order to access tuple, we will just write here 0. So this is how to create compound data types. So I think it was pretty straightforward, it was pretty simple, but you just need to get used to it in order to understand better what we are doing. So I would suggest that you try it yourself and send me a DM if you're stuck in any part, or ask in the Q&A section. I will be available to answer any of your questions. Okay, so let's go to the next lesson where we discuss Python functions, which is a very important concept. So let's go.